I will quote it in the way it came to me, which is, how would ensure and convince me the NHS is safe in your hands. And I did have somebody came to me earlier with an additional one, and their question was, if we have to pay for social care, how long will it be before we have to pay for the NHS? I'm going to ask Andrew Bingham if you'd like to respond to that one first, please.
Thank you. The NHS, I watched a television programme the other week about, it was question time actually, and I'm really made a point, and I think she's absolutely right. The NHS, we're going to have an argument up here, I suspect, about who's putting the most money in the NHS and what's private, what's public, etc., etc.
None of it should be private.
Just bear with me, please. I will tell you what the Conservative Party position is, and then I'm going to tell you what my position is. The Conservative Party position is that we said to Simon Stevens some time ago, how much money do you want for the NHS? He gave us a number and we gave it him. And the manifesto today has said that we will put £8 billion more into the NHS in real terms in the length of the next Parliament. Now that's what the Conservative position is, and I support that. But the question, and people come to speak to me in my role, prior to the election, trying to dissolve in Parliament as a member of Parliament, I've spoken to doctors, I've spoken to nurses, I've spoken to people who work in the health service. I ask this question. As we put more and more money into the health service, it never seems to be enough. Because it always seems to be, it needs this, it needs that, it needs the other. And what I would really like, and you'll all shout me down and say I'm being evangelical, I wish that we as politicians, the three of us up here, and Jeremy Corbyn, Theresa May, and Tim Farron, we could get round a table, chuck the politics out of the window, and have a proper grown-up debate about how we're going to fund the health service for a population of around 60 million people. The health service was set up when there was a population of around 50 million. The life expectancy was about 70 years. We've now got a population approaching 60 million, where we're all living longer, which is good. We're all living to be 80 plus. Those extra years are when you rely on the health service the most. So we're getting conditions. We were living longer to experience physical conditions, I don't mean social conditions, that the health service never had to deal with. And I really, really wish, and you'll laugh at me and you'll shout at me, I just wish that politicians above our pay grade would stop playing politics with the NHS and let's sit down and let's, the Labour Party make admissions, the Conservative Party make admissions, and the Liberal Democrat Party make admissions that perhaps one or two things we've got right and one or two things we've got wrong. Because that, I think, is the only way we can really get to the bottom of creating a health service that will actually serve the population of this country with its growing needs and its growing size. That's my personal view, and that's one that I would continue to espouse both publicly and politically.
Okay, Ruth George, please, would you like to stay for the Labour Party?
Okay, thank you very much. The NHS is something I care a lot about. As was mentioned, I do have 4 children. As any mum will know, you spend a lot of time with any child as they grow up between doctors and hospitals. My daughter had cancer quite a while ago. I spent about 6 months in a hospital. Aww. I also cared for my grandmothers, and I've seen some of the very best of the NHS, but I've also seen some of the very worst of it. And now as I go around speaking to people around High Peak, NHS staff are telling me that our NHS is in crisis. The hospitals are in deficit, they don't have enough staff, they are overstretched, and they're still facing huge cuts to their funding. Stepping Hill is still due to see a ward closing and beds lost in that hospital where people have to wait months and months and months to get an operation while they're in pain, while they can't get out of the house. That is wrong. Local people are also in despair over the waiting times for GP surgeries, and it's up to a month in some cases before you can go and see your GP. That is not delivering us the best health service because people cannot be seen early enough. That is why my number one priority was to try and take us back to the time we had 7 years ago, just 7 years ago, when you were guaranteed a waiting time of 48 hours to go and see your GP to sort problems out. One of the biggest problems with the NHS now is the Health and Social Care Act, which is starting to transfer all of our services over to the private sector. It's starting with the services in Stockport. They're being put out to tender. It's something that I lobbied Andrew about back when it happened, back in 2011. We had a public meeting in Whaley Bridge in which we raised quite detailed questions, and I wish we had had that discussion, Andrew, because I'm afraid at that time you did admit that you hadn't read the Health and Social Care Act at the time. You voted on it at second reading for the Health and Social Care Act.
It came back after going to the committee stage, and I read the revised act.
But it wouldn't have gone to the committee stage if it hadn't been passed at second reading. So I'm afraid that we need to look at proper scrutiny of what goes on in our NHS, and that is what I did as a member of the public concerned about the NHS to go and lobby my MP about it. But we also need to increase the funding, and that's why Labour are going to put £5.6 billion in. We will end the 1% pay cap for staff who feel undervalued.
Yay!
And we have to bring back nurses' bursaries so that we can...
Yay!
Go abroad to recruit our nurses, we can train and deliver our own nurses and cut back on the huge costs of agency staff that are crippling the rest of our hospitals. And thirdly, the guaranteed waiting times that we all need to have a decent NHS. Thank you.
Yay!
Just before I hand back to Charles Law, you made a particular statement about Andrew, which I'm not sure everybody heard.
No,
I just wonder if you'd like to repeat your answer to that.
The process of a bill in Parliament, the second reading is the first. The first reading, the bill is presented. The second reading, the bill is discussed, and then it goes off to committee stage. And at committee stage, a committee is appointed of the House, and it's a committee of MPs of both sides, and they go through the bill line by line by line, and it's amended. It can be amended by the government, by the opposition. The Health and Social Care Act bill at the time was a big bill. I haven't read all of it, you're right, but when it comes back from committee stage, it is very often, and this isn't just Health and Social Care Act, it's any act, it is vastly different. It can be vastly different than its original, in the original form at second reading. I can assure you that when it had come back from committee, I had read it fully from page to page and the explanatory notes. And then when it's gone through the parliamentary system in the Commons, it goes through the whole system again in the Lords and comes back again. So I can assure you by the time it's been through committee, I've read it and all the amendments.
Thank you, that was a bit of a longer answer to the first one, but I'll just hand over to Charles Lawley now for your view.
Hi. To be honest, I agree with large portions about what Ruth and Andrew said, really. Especially in terms of it's Lib Dem policy to establish a cross-party health and social care convention. But too long has the NHS been weaponised for political purposes. And actually, it's in everyone's interest that we all get it working, because we're probably all going to need it at some point in our lives. And as has been mentioned, we're all living longer than before. So I'm going to be honest with you, it's all our responsibility to pay for it, because we're all going to need it. So the Lib Dems would add 1 penny on every band of income tax to secure an extra 6 billion in funding for the NHS. 22 million of that would go to services local to us in the High Peak, and 5.5 million of that would go on local mental health care. The Lib Dems believe in transforming mental health care to have an equal footing with physical health care. We would do this through the introducing waiting time standards and extra funding for mental health care. We also believe in home, not hospital, so we would better integrate health and social care services, as it is desperately needed, and it's too disjointed. And finally, we would also protect freedom of movement, so that the hard Brexit doesn't kick out the 135,000 EU nationals who work in our NHS and social care. And that's staying alone.